Hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Violetta Jean, and I have a channel where I talk about the insights I gain along my spiritual journey. And today, while the sun is on its last legs, I wanted to talk to you about a Teal Swan workshop I went to recently. So it was really exciting for me. Teal Swan is my main spiritual teacher, and I got the opportunity, I suppose, to go to Montenegro for this festival called Ada Awakening Festival. And Teal was going to be the keynote speaker for that festival, and she gave a small workshop, and I was also blessed to go to her tea time afterwards, which was a smaller group. So I took a lot of notes at this workshop because obviously I was anticipating it a lot, so lots of notes. And she had 3 guests up that sat in the hot seat, and I resonated with all the guests. But I feel like if I was to have to choose one, it was the first person who sat up on stage that really spoke to me. I feel like the main takeaway I got from her workshop, which is the one I want to kind of share with you today, is this idea about being on the fence. Now, apparently a lot of the audience, and certainly me, was going through this thing where they were just on the fence in their lives between the old version of themselves, their old life, their old habits, their old behaviors, the old things they prioritized, and then the version of themselves they wanted to become, their new me, their new life. And this guest is basically on the fence between the two, like can't actually, stuck between the two and can't actually decide on which, but that also means they're neither. So that's also why I titled the video the way I did, something along the lines of, and she said this herself in the workshop to this man, that you're not who you were, but you're not who you're becoming yet either. You're somewhere in this icky middle, and boy did I resonate. And this video will be, I feel like, I hope to be useful to you if that's something you resonate with. And so I resonated with it in my own life because I definitely feel like I'm very committed to this spiritual path and really wanting to go deeper with it and things like that. But at the same time, I'm still in my normie life. I'm still have a normal job. I'm still surrounded by people who aren't into spirituality. I don't really have many people who have my own interests. And so I'm still almost living this kind of double life where in private I am, all about inner work and shadow work and journaling and meditating and all that. But in the world, I fit in. And the realization that I got from that was, wow, so me wanting to kind of fit in, and this is just in my case, but me wanting to fit in and still be part of like kind of normal society or the society I'm surrounded by is really getting in the way of my spiritual path, and that's what I'm on the fence about. So while I may and have sat there and said, oh, no, I'm really committed to this, I'm really dedicated to this, at the same time, I still make efforts to, I don't know, it just feels like come across as normal. And so, and that's just was my thing. And basically she said, you have to make a decision. You're on the fence because you're actually being indecisive right now. You're choosing neither. And you don't want to choose either or because there are consequences to that. There are consequences for choosing old me and old life. You know what those consequences are for you, right? That's why you're trying to become the version of yourself you want to be. But what you may not be acknowledging is that there's actually massive consequences for becoming the version you want to be. And that is why you're at a stalemate right now. And what you have to do is, you got to actually make a decision either or, and you got to understand that you can choose old me and old life. That's something you can choose. But right now, we're sitting in the position where we almost feel victimized by ourselves. We feel like we've got these self-sabotaging aspects of ourselves, behaviors and stuff that keep us in our old ways or our old selves. But really we don't understand that we're actually choosing that. We wouldn't feel victimized by ourselves if we understood and could see how we're actually the ones deciding to do those things, and that we have reasons to decide that as well. So I guess to bring it back to me, that kind of really struck me. It was just like an oh no moment, actually. It wasn't good news. It was not good news, because I realized that basically I'm in resistance to the version of myself I want to be. I'm actually resisting that actively. But that would mean to continue to align with who I want to become and that version of myself. That actually does mean that there's something I have to give up, right? Because there's a reason we're on the fence, because there are consequences for not choosing old me and old life. There are consequences for that. And subconsciously we know that. That's why we can lead this almost double life. And so what you actually have to do, and what she said as well, is you've got to look at what they even are, and you have to understand that you are choosing that. You are actually making the decision. So conscious, but it's all subconscious. It's all subconscious right now. So what you actually need to do is first acknowledge that that's what's going on, but then you need to be like, consciously make a decision now. You actually need to consciously make a decision. Which is it? Which is it? Because right now you're on the fence. You're neither. You're either or. Okay, well, that means internally there's no consensus. And you need a consensus to move forward, because you're just stuck right now. And obviously there's no getting anywhere with that. And so which are you going to choose? Consciously now. Subconsciously you're like split. Like maybe consciously you're like, I want to go this way. Subconsciously like, no. Well, now it's time to look at all your reasons for old me and old life, the old version of yourself. Look at your reasons for that and actually make a decision about it. You actually have to decide, because you can. You can decide old me and old life. You could decide to wake up one morning and decide to actually just stay in bed and never get out. That's a decision you can make. No one's, you can actually do that. So which is it? And it is kind of like bad news to hear, though, because it's in a way a lose-lose situation. Because if you even are on the fence, it does mean that there are consequences for you becoming the version of yourself you want to be. And those consequences, those things you fear, or the things you'll feel pain about if you do, the consequence. Yeah, that kind of sucks. And it's also something that you can't get around, and it's also something that you have to accept. And so are you going to or not? Are you going to? You got to make a decision, either or. What is it going to be? Because you can't just stay in this limbo forever. You don't want to do that. But you are keeping yourself in this limbo, and that's something you have to realize. You are in this limbo, and it's because you've got split aspects of yourself choosing different things. You are not on the same page with yourself. And so it's time to get on the same page. And so to round this all out, I think, if you feel like you are stuck between the version of yourself you used to be and the version of yourself you are aiming to become, it's because there are consequences for becoming that version of yourself that you do not want to accept. And so you are actively choosing these sabotaging behaviors, or these, I don't know, behaviors and actions and ways of being in the world that keep you socially safe, usually. You're actively choosing that. You're choosing emotional comfort over, usually it's emotional comfort over the version of you you want to become. And that is a decision you are actually making. You are actually deciding that now. And it's all subconscious. But are you okay with deciding that? Are you okay that that's a decision you're like kind of currently making, that some aspects of you, half of you basically, are choosing those things and would prefer that over becoming the version of you you want to be? Well, that's something you've got to ask yourself in order to move forward. And I feel like how this has shown up in my own life is definitely, like, for me, it's all been about staying socially safe for me personally, because I've definitely struggled with feeling like I don't belong and not feeling like I am accepted, and just kind of feeling misunderstood, or that there's no kind of like birds of a feather around me, and that's, it feels very kind of emotionally unsafe. And so the way I've coped has definitely been to kind of chameleon camouflage myself and become codependent in that way, where you kind of present yourself as different than what you are in order to fit in better. So that has been huge for me. That's been a huge pattern I've been dealing with, and that's something that is kind of coming up for me now to look at, because basically I am and have been choosing to stay socially safe over being authentic and continuing to expand more on my spiritual path. That's what I've been actually choosing. And that's something to confront for sure. That was confronting to see that, because what that means is you actually have to make a decision about that, for or against, and it is not a great decision, because you're protecting yourself from fear and pain by being old self and old me in lots of ways. You're protecting yourself, and so it makes you feel really, really vulnerable, the idea of just suddenly not doing that, and a lot comes up internally that you have to then kind of deal with for you to even get around to the idea that, okay, maybe I'll step out more. So that was about it. I hope you got something out of what I said. I hope it made sense. I really got a lot out of that workshop. That was a really important takeaway for me, a really important realization. I feel like I definitely got more access to my power, more access to my free will as well, as a result of that kind of realization and that teaching that I took away. And I'm really going to milk that. So that's it. But if you enjoyed this video, and if you're going to be curious about insights I have in the future on this spiritual path of mine, please follow along, and I'll see you again in the next video. Thank you for watching.